Hello, this is Perry Peacock with Wilderness Innovation, and today's podcast is kind of a Q&A on the teepee poncho. Well, oh man, I'm tongue-tied here. Whatever. The teepees made using our PSSL Poncho, the long poncho, and I did a little video and some pictures last spring at the cabin, making a teepee out of a PSSL poncho, and using kind of the traditional method, using a tripod of sticks and then adding, one or two more for convenience, and then of course this recent one here, doing the teepee using just a pull-up. I call it a pull-up teepee because typically in that kind of situation you're not using any sticks at all. And so let's get right to it here. I got about a dozen questions or something like that, and we'll kind of go through and answer some of those, and it might help you decide if that's something that you want to try doing, and see if it's practical for you or whatever, and kind of give a few tips and pointers on some stuff I've messed around with in using the poncho teepees. I suppose one of the first questions would be, why make a teepee out of a poncho? And I can understand the question, because a teepee made out of a poncho is going to be pretty small, and granted, it's going to be a one-person teepee, and it's going to be kind of limited in space and use. But I would say one of the huge pluses for it is if you get in a situation where you really need to shelter up a little bit, get out of the rain somewhat, out of the wind especially. Sometimes wind can be one of the biggest deals. You get wet or something and get a wind going, or just get a cold wind, and sometimes that really hampers you. And sometimes, just like in this last video, you want to cook up a little something to eat or whatever, but you need to get a little bit out of the elements to do that practically. So a teepee made out of a poncho is very quick to make. Takes very little resources, as I demonstrated in the pull-up teepee. And so, since it's quick, easy, very little resources, and easy to take down, easy to put up, why not? So let's kind of, I think this question will actually be answered a little bit, probably a little bit more as we go through some of the other questions. Now, in as far as supporting the teepee, should a person use poles or do a pull-up? Well, and I stated in this newest video I made where I did the pull-up teepee that, kind of overall, I probably would favor using the sticks or poles, perhaps a little more than just the pull-up, just because the poles offer a very rigid framework for the poncho to drape around, and there's less chance of wind really doing a whole lot of pushing against it, because the poles positively stop the teepee or the poncho fabric from coming in very far or anything, because it can't, and it's very, very sturdy. Now another way to look at that, though, is the pull-up teepee I made. I actually didn't even realize until I was taking it down that I had never bothered to tie off the parachute cord that was pulling up on it to support it in the upward position. I just took that rock that I threw over the branch, I just threw it over another branch. I never did tie it off, or I never did even pull up on it to try to tension it. So actually it held up really nicely, just with the weight of the the weight of that little rock, maybe a 1 pound rock or something. So it actually did hold up pretty nicely. So I suppose either way is just fine. If you're in an area where a lot of times it may not be worth the trouble in a lot of areas to try to find the poles or get the poles made up to support the teepee with poles. So a pull-up might be the most practical answer. Some areas that you're in, why 6 foot long straight sticks will be very common and easy to come by, so it's not really a big deal. So I think some of that you're going to gauge by your area, and you're going to gauge by how you want to use it, or how much you're going to use it, how long you're going to use it. If you're just going to get in there and you're going to be in there for an hour or 2 hours or something to cook a meal or just to take a rest from the weather, maybe even curl up and take a little nap. Maybe a pull-up is the best because it's the easiest, takes the least resources. So now the next question is, and this kind of naturally falls right into place here, is the question, isn't it too small to be worth it? Is it that? I mean, you saw in the video how small the teepee is. I mean, I could sit up in it fine, and I had enough shoulder room, enough headroom, and all that sort of thing. I had my backpack that I stuffed clear in the back of the teepee for most of the time that I was shooting the video. So I mean, it was in there out of the way, and I could still be all inside. So, now granted, if you're not gonna, let's say you want to use it to sleep in, which actually is the next question, so we're kind of gonna probably cover that at the same time right here. Sleeping in it, obviously you're going to do, kind of a fetal type position. So you're going to lay on your side and just kind of curl up. So, if you're not a person that can do that very well, then probably sleeping is going to be out. Now myself, I typically sleep on my side. I may not sleep, totally fetal position, but I can do it. I can do it just fine, and so for me, yeah, it's absolutely doable. So I would say no, it's not too small to be worth it. I mean, it's for one person, and it does get you out of the weather. It gets you out of the wind. And granted, it's not going to be absolutely totally waterproof. I mean, you may get some drips or a little bit here and there, but hey, if you got something really coming down and you can keep 98% of it off of you, it's probably still well worth doing. And being that you can put it up pretty quickly, sure, it's something, to me, it's something worth practicing a little bit and learning how to do it, so if you get in a situation, you can quickly set you up a little shelter. And as far as sleeping in a poncho teepee, absolutely, if you can sleep on your side, curled up a little bit, kind of semi-fetal position. Depends on how tall you are. If you're 6'4", it may not be too doable. If you're 5'10" or 6 feet or something like that, or maybe shorter than 5'10" or whatever, it's absolutely doable. Another question here is do you have to use a PSSL to make a teepee out of a poncho, or will the PSS work? And if you're not familiar with the two of them, PSS is kind of our what our ponchos go by, and it stands for Poncho Survival Shelter, and so the L on the end just means long, so it's a long version. It's a foot longer than the PSS. So Can you make one out of a PSS? You could, yes, but I'm afraid that the PSS is that's going to be just a little too short. I mean, you can try it. I haven't actually even tried it with the PSS because I've used the PSSL, and that's doable. But you know, it's still to me. I'm thinking, I don't know how much smaller the PSS would be, but you know, still, even if you couldn't totally close in the front, you still might be able to have three side, you know, kind of a wraparound and have an open doorway. It might still be doable. It might still be worth doing. So I guess I don't know the answer to that one. Another question was, how sturdy is a teepee made out of a poncho? Well, it's as sturdy as however you pitch it. If you have my favorite way using sticks or poles is you have poles that are, say, at least probably 5.5 to 6 feet long. And my preference, what I really like the best, is using about 5 of them. And so I usually kind of start out making a tripod out of 3, and then I kind of add a 4th one to make the shelter sort of rectangular. So then I'll kind of, once I put the 4th one up, I'll kind of shift, the original 3 a little bit, so I kind of form a rectangle. And then the 5th one can go in, say on the back wall. In other words, the wall opposite your door opening, and it can go in there just to kind of push that back wall, just instead of being straight, make it just a little more curved. So I like doing that. Now, so you put the poles up and you just lash them, or just tie them off with a jam knot or whatever, and with a piece of parachute cord, and they'll hold up pretty good. I've even done it before, not tying the poles at all. Usually you find them. There's usually some little branches and stuff that come off, and if when you do your poles you don't take all those off, you have a little bit of forking going on here and there. You can usually lay the poles up together to where they kind of jam together pretty good, and then when you drape the poncho around them and start staking it down and all that sort of thing, the poncho basically itself can actually hold the poles up. So you don't necessarily need to tie them up even. I would probably recommend it because it's going to be that much sturdier. And then how you stake down your poncho around it will contribute quite a bit to how sturdy it is too. Now, if you're using a pull-up teepee, then you'd probably want to go a step beyond what I did in the video, and you'd probably want to stake the sides down really good. Once you get them out, kind of test them and everything's kind of the size you want, then I would go ahead and and tighten that parachute cord that's pulling up on the teepee, and probably tension it as good as you can. You just kind of judge it, and it's going to be pretty darn sturdy. It's a teepee shape is pretty sturdy anyway, so you're pretty good. You're not going to have much problem with it. So now the next question is the floor of the poncho teepee. How do you stay dry? So obviously, if you have a situation, probably because anybody listening to this probably may have just watched the video, and so you'd be familiar with what I did there. So let me just take it from how I was there. And so what I did is go onto the bare ground underneath a juniper tree and pitch up the pull-up teepee, and then I just threw my kind of cleaned the ground, and obviously in juniper country I made sure there's no cactuses there. You really do have to watch for that in juniper country. But but it, you know, it was smooth, pretty much no big rocks or anything like that. And then I just threw my fleece poncho liner. I folded it up a couple of times and then put it in there, just kind of something to sit on. Now, obviously, the question though is staying dry. So the deal there is, you know, let's say you have a pretty driving rain or something like that. You know, there's a possibility, and maybe a good possibility, depending on where you're at, that you know you could have some water starting to flow into that. You know, and you know obviously you could probably trench around it, kind of like in the olden days how we used to do tents, and that would probably help quite a bit. What I would do though, because you know, if I'm doing it, I'm probably, well, it depends on where you're at. But I would say if I'm in pine tree country or I'm in juniper country, I would take some boughs, like where I pitched that one. You know, that's a juniper forest. So I would pile, like, I would put the thing up, or maybe I'd even do it beforehand. I'd pile up like a foot thick of juniper boughs. And do them like when we make a juniper bed, like I've showed before, where you put all the stems and stuff, kind of point them down and out. And then so in the middle where you'd be sitting or laying or whatever, that would be all the tips of the boughs, so it'd be soft and nothing to poke you. But if you get a little bit of distance, if you could do those a foot thick, and then when you sit on them they'll compress, well, chances are, you know, I've done a lot of stuff before where I have piled up some juniper boughs to sit on either wet, muddy ground or even ground that's got snow on it or whatever, rainy areas and stuff like that. You know, if you can get 10 or 12 inches thick of those, and then when you sit on them, you're still going to be, you know, 4 or 5 inches thick. Well, you know, chances are, unless you pitched your setup in a hole, even if you get water flowing underneath there, you're going to stay dry because you're above where the water's going. So, you know, to me that would be the way to stay dry inside of there. And if I was, you know, sitting there any length of time, or if I wanted to, you know, curl up and take a nap or something like that, why, I would definitely throw some boughs down there to make it really nice and soft and cozy. So, you know, that's my answer there. The next question on the list here is the front door area. In other words, open or shut is the question. And I would say, you know, you probably leave it open. Orient the thing. I was oriented perpendicular to the wind, which generally that's about the best thing, is to be perpendicular to the wind. But you know, you want to leave the door open, of course, if you're cooking or different things like that. But you know, if you've got some tough weather coming in and stuff like that, then you know, then you're going to want to shut it down a little bit. Now there's different ways you can shut it down. You can take, like in the video I just made on the pull-up teepee, the way that was pitched out, I had most of my door, in other words, I just left it sticking straight out as kind of a barrier to the wind. Well, I can pull that around and close it right off, or I can take that piece and fold it part way, and take the other end of your poncho, in other words, that I had kind of folded right down, and I can kind of pitch those together and tie them off out in the front, so it makes kind of an A-frame doorway leading out of the teepee, kind of like going out of an igloo, sort of. And so that works. That can work pretty effectively. And and if it's pretty well, I'll answer this where I was going. I'll answer that in another question here. So basically, whether you close or open the door just depends on what you're doing, your situation. but it can be left open or shut up. Sometimes you can configure the door opening well enough that you can lay, reasonably straight out and have most of your body inside, and then have, like your legs kind of hanging into the kind of the A-frame doorway area. If you watch my video that I did last spring, you'll find it in the PSSL Poncho playlist on YouTube. If you look in there, you'll see the teepee one back in, I don't know, I can't remember, spring or summer of 2014. And but if you see that, you watch that, you can see I had that pitched up at one point where it kind of came out like I'm describing it. So you can take a look at that. Another question is, if the poncho, the PSSL, can be made into a tarp, why bother with a teepee at all? Why not just make an A-frame shelter or make a lean-to? And that's a good question. You can make an A-frame out of the poncho two different ways. You can make your A-frame roof, you can make it either lengthways or crossways. If you make it lengthways, then basically you're taking just under 5 feet of width and kind of folding it down the middle and making a roof. And then it's 8 feet long if you're using the PSSL, 7 feet long if you're using the standard PSS. So that can make a nice roof, and I've done it before. I've done it. I did it one time. In fact, I was camping with my sons, and we were actually hammock camping, and I didn't even bring me a tarp in case of rain. And well, about 2 in the morning, it started raining pretty good. So I bailed out of my hammock that was made out of the poncho, right? I bailed out of that and just reconfigured it into a A-frame going lengthwise, and then I just laid between the two trees, having it strung A-frame wise between me, and I slept through the rain just fine in there. So that's doable. Now, any type of A-frame, basically you're covered on two sides, but you have two ends open. And if you pitch the A-frame crossways, then of course you're only just a little under 5 feet wide, and then you have a little more to work with going the other way. So that's doable. But here again, if you need to effectively block the wind, or if you have kind of swirling rains or something come in, an A-frame may not necessarily be good enough. The teepee might provide you a little more protection because you can basically wrap it all the way around you. Now, of course, you're going to be a little more squishy in there, but you really just have to weigh the situation and say what's going to be the best, what's going to do me the most good. So now the next question is sealing the top. So so like a teepee, if you have sticks coming out up through the top, obviously, if it's raining, rain can hit those sticks and kind of work its way down through there and then run down inside. And of course that's something, whether you got a big Indian style teepee or whatever, is how you do drip lines or different things like that to try to keep from just dripping all over the place. And that's obviously an issue. What I've tried to do is, anytime I set up like that, is try to make that opening at the top as tight as possible. So I have as little as possible, open area there. I did do it one time. I just put a bag over the sticks that pointed out of the top when I was using a stick method, and or poles, and I just put a bag over there and kind of pulled it down, and that basically closed it right off, and that did the trick just by itself. If you're using a pull-up, you have even less opening, so you don't have nearly as much to worry about. If you do have some of our easy clips with you, you can actually, when you set up the top, you can actually, takes a little bit of effort to do this, but you could actually take where the edges come together and then just fold them over, and then clamp down your easy clip, and so basically it'll kind of fold it over, so there isn't actually even there's virtually no opening up there. So I mean, that's another way. You're not going to be absolutely totally sealed in, but you can eliminate enough of it that it's really not an issue anymore. Now, only 2 more questions to go. One of them is, can you use a fire in the front opening of the poncho teepee instead of using a stove? Well, oh yeah, you can definitely, and I've done fires in front of even our regular sized tarp, and that when you set it up as a diamond pitch or whatever, leaves you an opening on one edge, and I've done a little fire on the ground, and you could do the same thing here. It's not a problem, easily done, and in some respects it might even be easier to do a fire than a stove, because the little stoves, I mean, you have to feed the fuel into the whatever size or dimensions the stove is. So, and it does restrict how big it can be, where if you build it on the ground, you can kind of easier regulate to make it a little bit bigger or whatever. The disadvantage of a fire, the only real disadvantage of just building one on the ground is being able to position it where when you need to get in and out of your shelter, you're not having to practically burn yourself getting in and out of there. So, where a stove, you can actually just take a couple of sticks and you can actually pick the stove up and move it aside to get in and out if you need to. So the stove does give you some portability, but I've done it both ways. Either way can work fine. Just be aware of that. The last question is, and I don't know, this is kind of, I don't know how to answer this exactly. It's what's the most practical use of a poncho teepee? And I would say myself, I'm probably, unless I'm in a pinch, I'm probably not going to use a poncho teepee for sleeping the night in. I mean, it's not out of the question by any means, but it's not as likely that I would do that. But I would use it like I did in this last video, the pull up teepee, where you just want to get out of the weather. And it turned out it didn't really sprinkle a little, never did really rain on me that day, but it was forecast and looked like it was starting to. But it's a great protection for getting out of the wind, and it's a good little protection of kind of getting out of the rain, especially where it's a little more windy and a little less sheltered area. It's nice to do because the teepee does give you protection all the way around. And any other kind of tarp setup you try to do, you are going to have an open area. And of course that can be minimized by pitching it lower to the ground. So if you did a lean-to or you did an A-frame out of a poncho, if the weather's more blustery or whatever, then you might pitch that thing a little bit lower to the ground. You may not be able to sit up in it, but you're by doing that, you're limiting how much can actually kind of get in at you. So that's another option if you didn't want to do a teepee. But I would say that the most practical use is a temporary shelter that can be very quickly and easily made. Just really just kind of like I did there, Sometime you might want to just throw that thing up there and just wait out a little stormy weather, or say you're waiting for somebody. I mean, you can wear your poncho and just do a seated bivvy, like I've done some video on that. And so you can do that and just sit like that, which that's absolutely doable as well. But then in some ways, making a little teepee is actually a little more deluxe than that. So I don't know. I would say the best thing would be for people, you just start using a teepee here and there, set it up, mess around with it, see what you like, what you don't like about it, tweak it around a little bit to satisfy your needs, and then, once you play with it a little bit, you'll kind of come to your own decision as, when would I use it and when would I not. But I think it's valid enough since our poncho is a poncho survival shelter. We want to be able to show you a lot of the different ways it can be used, and some are going to be more practical than others. But the teepee is a very viable alternative, so we wanted to make sure we showed you how to do that. So anyway, well, I hope this little audio podcast type of deal will answer a few questions that might have come up if you watched the video, some things you might have wondered about. And if you have any other questions beyond that, you can always shoot me an email at Perry at Wilderness Innovation or info at Wilderness Innovation. You can respond on YouTube, although we've got 270 videos up there now, so I don't get around once the video's been up there a little bit and we've moved on to new ones. It's hard to keep up with all the videos and stuff as far as answering comments. So probably the best way would be directly. You go to our webpage, wilderness.innovation.com, and there's a deal at the top for comments or contact. Contact is what it is. Click on that. It'll send us an email to info at Wilderness Innovation. So you can always ask that way. Or if you want to call, a lot of times I'm available to chat on the phone a little bit too. So any questions, comments, whatever, let us know. We also have a Facebook page, Facebook / Wilderness Innovation. And you can go on there and ask questions or make comments too. So anyway, hope this thing was valuable to you. Maybe I answered a few questions. Maybe I created some questions. I don't know. But anyway, take care. Enjoy your time outdoors, and try to make the best use you can of all the gear you've got. And making a teepee out of a poncho is just it's another way, another method of using the gear to provide some kind of shelter. So take care. Be safe, and I'll catch you on the next video or podcast. And have a great day. Bye.